To anyone who believes that December 14th was unimaginable, it is because we have failed to hear the Jewish community. When Jews were told not to go to the Opera House on October 7th, when thugs were allowed to denigrate the steps of the Opera House and spew their hatred, we should have known then. When students have been subjected to harassment and vile abuse on our university campuses, when Jewish parents have had to tell their children not to wear their Jewish uniforms, we should have known then. When Jews were doxxed and abused online, when people were called to boycott Jewish businesses, when hate preachers in Sydney celebrated the murder of Jews on October 7, we should have known then. When protesters were allowed to descend on our city each week and scream from the river to the sea, globalise the intifada, we should have known then. When cars were firebombed, when neo-Nazis stood outside this parliament with a sign that said abolish the Jewish lobby, we should have known then. When hate becomes normalised in a nation, how can we possibly believe there is any outcome other than what we saw on last Sunday? Wow, look at you all. I love this community. I love Bondi, but I'm absolutely heartbroken to be standing before you tonight in these circumstances. I'm standing before you, of course, as the leader of the New South Wales opposition and as the state member for Vaucluse. But I'm more than that. I'm a regular person. I'm a member of this community, and I'm someone who witnessed the absolute devastation firsthand last Sunday. I stand before you as someone who saw the devastation, who arrived here last week while the shots were still being fired, who witnessed the chaos and the distress, and who saw the injured and who held the hands of those who needed their hands held, who saw the chaos and the terror, but also saw the kindness and so many acts of bravery. Through the ages, people had denied the pogroms, the massacre of Jews. Indeed, within hours of the attacks on Sunday, there was already that sick denialism. Propaganda on social media, claims that Arsen Ostrovsky, the man that you would have seen in the media with blood down his face, who is sitting here in front of me tonight, and Arsen, you're looking so much better than last time I saw you. They claimed it was part of some sort of theater, that it was made up. And then they got fact checkers to prove that it was real. The digital hallmarks, the AI that didn't quite align. So yeah, his story was real. But let me tell you my proof, because I stood there amongst the destruction and the chaos, and I saw Arsen, and he was standing there alone, in shock, looking like a statue, a bloody statue out of a movie. It was real. It was very real. And I went up to Arsen and I took his arm and I led him to brave beachgoers who'd come up from the surf to help and provide assistance. His story is one of many that I witnessed that day. Earlier that evening, I'd been celebrating the first day of Hanukkah just up the road in Dover Heights, and people were laughing and they were dancing, and it was such a joyous occasion. And I was on a stage just like this, about to address the crowd, about to talk about the hope I had after a horror start to the year, a year that had started with our community facing consistent firebombings almost day after day and vandalism, helicopters flying over our houses at night while we slept to keep our Jewish neighbours safe. A year where the Jewish community had been doxxed, they'd been abused, they'd been unable to attend university, they had been abandoned by old friends and colleagues in the most heartbreaking way, and people were in fear, and they were accused of overreacting, and no one, very few at least, paid attention when community leaders said, they warned, that history tells us that hate speech makes violence possible. How could anyone who is a student of history deny that broken windows lead to violence? Well, let there be no doubt now. Antisemitism has now led to the spilling of blood on our nation's most iconic beach, a place that has, for all of us, been a symbol of freedom, of hope, and of the Australian spirit, of our inclusion, of our beautiful diversity. But on that stage, last week, I didn't get a chance to share my words of hope. Instead, while I stood there, I saw the crowd start to run and disperse. I saw CSG security guards start to lock down the event. And I jumped in a Hatzolah ambulance with medic Rabbi Mendy Litzman. Mendy is here tonight, and he is still working. Raise your hand, Mendy. What a hero. I ended up bundled into Mendy's ambulance. I don't know that he needed an extra passenger, but he was on the phone to his colleague Yankee, who had been shot, and Yankee was in a bad state. And so we raced down here to Bondi, arriving within minutes, and we parked under that bridge while the gunman was still on top. And Mendy grabbed his kit and he raced into the scene without any thought for his own safety, making impossible choices about who to deal with first and who to treat. And I helped a man and his 10-year-old boy who were hiding under that bridge get into our ambulance because I thought they'd be safer there. And then I walked into the scene. And what I saw will haunt me forever. But I saw police running into the scene fast and unhesitating with guns drawn, headed into danger. And I heard, "Thank you to our police," and the final pop, pop, pop of gunfire. And I tried my best to help. A surf lifesaver told me, "Grab bandages." I said, "What do I do?" And he said, "Plug the holes." And I ended up sitting next to people and holding their hands, putting blankets over people who we couldn't help anymore. And I had people fall into my arms who were grief-stricken because they felt that they hadn't done enough. And we all felt that way. But man, I saw them as heroes, and they were heroes. And there was nothing more any of us could do. So what do we do now? How do we save our community? How do we honor the lives of those 15 people who passed away? It is an impossible task. And how do we say sorry? How do we say sorry for failing our community? How do we comprehend what has happened to our country? Tomorrow in New South Wales Parliament, I will read the names of those who've lost their lives in a condolence motion in Parliament with the Premier, and thank you, Premier, for your compassion this week. We will honour the first responders, the surf lifesavers, the regular citizens who came to help, including the brave Ahmed El-Ahmed, who I visited in hospital, Superman, to the rabbis who were strong and brave and who have carried such a burden for the community this week. We will honour the police, and we will honour all the people who visited Bondi with bunches of flowers and who sent messages. And that outpouring of love has given me hope. It's given me hope that we will mend together. But tonight I'm here with you, our community, with you, steadfast, with our broader Bondi and Eastern Suburbs community, to say that I am in pieces with you, but I will be strong like you are strong, and you inspire me. And together we will find the light together. Thank you. On Sunday, the 14th of December at 6:47, my community changed. Our country changed. On a summer evening filled with the laughter of children and music, beachgoers and families were coming together to celebrate the first night of Hanukkah and enjoy the weekend. It was happy and it was joyful. It was Bondi as we know it, our Bondi, the beach that is the embodiment of all that is good about Australia, our free spirit, our diversity, and our optimism. A community that welcomes you with open arms, no matter what your background. In a matter of minutes, though, that Bondi was left shattered and the Jewish community's worst fears were realised. It has been just over a week since that terrible Sunday, a week that has felt like a nightmare. And every morning when we wake up, we hope for a moment that none of this was true. But we're quickly brought back to reality, a reality where we are broken and we are wondering how our community ever recovers from this. On behalf of the opposition, I join the Premier in offering our deepest condolences to the victims, their families and their friends, and I acknowledge the families and friends and community leaders that we have in the gallery today. Today, this Parliament remembers and honours the 15 innocent victims who were murdered. Sophia and Boris Gurman, Rabbi Eli Schlanger, Edith Brutman, Boris Tedelyroyd, Matilda Marika Pogany, Peter Ma, Dan Elkiam, Reuven Morrison, Tibor Weitzen, Alexander Kleitman, Rabbi Yaakov Levitin, Adam Smith, and Tanya Tirtak. We must not allow their memory to be defined by December 14, but by the lives that they lived. Lives filled with love and filled with joy. Lives of resilience and service to others. From the little girl with the most Australian of names, Matilda, whose family came from the Ukraine for a better life, who to her dad was simply known as B, someone who had so much life to give, so many memories to make, whose parents last night, while David Campbell was singing We'll Sing Matilda, embraced in tears and danced in front of a crowd. We send them our love. To Alexander Kleitman, who survived the horrors of the Holocaust, who died on that Sunday trying to protect his wife of 57 years, Larissa, from the terrorist bullets. What a shame that we carry as a nation that a man who survived the Holocaust in frozen Siberia, who gave so much to our country and thought he would be safe here, that he could not survive hate in our country. To Boris and Sophia Gurman, married for 34 years, honest, hardworking, selfless people, their final moments tell you all you need to know about this amazing couple. They tried to stop the terrorists, Boris wresting the gun from one of them. And as evil descended on Bondi, these two guardian angels did not think of their own safety. They only thought of what they could do to save others. Rabbi Kellie Sloane, an extraordinary community leader and a beautiful and gentle man who I had the pleasure to know. A devoted man of faith who lived that faith in how he helps others, travelling to assist people around New South Wales in prisons. He wouldn't see criminals, he saw people capable of redemption. To Peter Ma, a husband, cherished brother and uncle, a man who served for 34 years in the New South Wales Police Force, retiring as a detective sergeant, a man who kept our community safe for so many years. He was enjoying his retirement and was there at Bondi taking photographs. Dan Elkiam, a young man from France building a new life in Australia, celebrating his faith that night in a country that he loved. Marika Pogny, a loving mother, grandmother, sister, and aunt, someone who again displayed the best of Australia. She volunteered for the Jewish Senior Services provider COA, delivering kosher meals to Jewish seniors. Edith Brookman, who sought in life to work against prejudice and antisemitism. She was vice president of the New South Wales branch of B'nai B'rith, an international Jewish organisation that aims to combat anti-Semitism and provide humanitarian aid. Her family have said, "We ask that her life, not the senseless violence that took it, be what endures. We hope her memory calls us as a nation back to decency and courage and peace." Adam Smith, a loving husband and father of four, a man whose family have talked of his love of sport, from the Manly Sea Eagles to the Sydney Swans and football team Liverpool. He was simply taking a walk along Bondi Beach with his wife. Reuven Morrison, a man of courage and generosity. He emigrated as a teenager to Australia from the Soviet Union in the 1970s. Reuven built a better life for his family in Australia, and all of us have seen those images of him throwing bricks at the terrorists, doing what he could do to protect others. As my son said, what a legend. What a legend. His courage was like that of David facing down a Goliath of evil. We honour him today. To Tibor Whiteson, a father, a grandfather, a great-grandfather. At his funeral last week, he was remembered for his commitment and service to his community, for his intellect, for his questioning nature, for always supporting people side by side with his beautiful wife, Eva. For 9 months, Tibor eagerly awaited the birth of his great-grandchild. He shared this anticipation openly at the synagogue, where his deep love for his grandchildren and growing family were evident. His great-grandson is due this week. What cruelty to have this moment of beauty taken away from him. Rabbi Yaakov Levitin, a man of humility, a man who served the Jewish community so greatly. His community have said that if anything needed to happen, Levitin made it happen. Rabbi Schlanger and Rabbi Levitin worked so closely together, and we've heard that Rabbi Schlanger was often the man of great ideas and Rabbi Levitin was the one who put them into action. In truth, they probably played both those roles together. But on Sunday, he was doing what he always did, making sure the event ran smoothly and that everyone was enjoying themselves. Boris Tedelroyd, a gifted musician and loving father. His family have said Boris was loved by everyone he met. He was well known to his neighbours, deeply connected to our wider community, and cherished by his family. Boris was a gentleman and a valued member of his community. We honour his life and the love he so generously gave to those around him. Tanya Tritrak, a loving grandmother that dedicated her life and her family and always put them first, even in her final moments, as she protected her granddaughter from the terrorists. 15 innocent souls. Their stories are Australian stories. The stories of people coming to our shores for a better life, of helping others before yourself, of loving your family, of working hard. Each of them made our state better, made the lives around them brighter, may their memories be a blessing. On the 14th of December, our community needed heroes, and we were not let down. There were the immediate family and community members, like Jessica Rosen, desperately searching for her son amidst the gunfire last Sunday and seeing a little girl screaming, throwing her arms around her, shielding her with her own body until the shooting stopped, saying, "I got you, I got you." 14-year-old Haya, who climbed out from under a bench, putting herself in the path of live fire and laying on top of two small children, protecting them from the bullets. She was shot, But last night she showed a whole nation her strength when she spoke of that day. Police, paramedics, lifeguards, surf lifesavers had solar the brave young volunteers from CSG, CSH, and members of the public ran headfirst into the danger. I saw it. They were incredible. The best of Australia on display. At Bondi and North Bondi Surf Lifesaving Club, they were celebrating their Christmas parties as the shots rang out. They didn't hesitate, they leapt into action. They rescued children from playgrounds, gave first aid and advanced resuscitation, used their rescue boards as makeshift stretchers. The image of Waverley lifeguard Jackson Doolan running barefoot from Tamarama to Bondi with medical equipment to support his mates and help the injured defines the dedication of our surf lifeguards. Trauma nurse Caitlin Davidson, who ran into the carnage from her North Bondi apartment, doing everything she could to save the injured. Our paramedics showed professionalism and skill that night, triaging the wounded and saving lives. The doctors and nurses at hospitals around Sydney swung into action, performing surgery around the clock, rushing into hospital to receive the influx of injured. Our police ran towards these terrorists. Detective Caesar Bizarra firing on the gunman from behind a tree. Constable Scott Dyson and probationary constable Jack Hibbert, who confronted the terrorists and were both shot. Jack had only been in the job for 4 months. It's going to be a long road to recovery for Jack and Scott, but we are with them. Our local police command, led by Detective Superintendent Jody Radmore, have demonstrated time and time again over the past few years their bravery and dedication to our community. The men and women of CSG who protected the Jewish community every day, brave, committed, resilient volunteers. And on the 14th of December, they showed their mettle. The trauma of that day will stay with our first responders for a long time. They carry so much on their shoulders to keep our community safe. Everyday members of the public reminded us that heroes don't always wear capes. Many, it turns out, wear thongs and board shorts. And then, of course, Ahmed El Ahmed. What a brave man. When I met him last week, he told me that God gave him the strength to do what he did, and his courage saved countless lives. Geffen Bitten, another hero who ran to help Ahmed disarm one of the terrorists. That is the humanity we must remember from that day. Our thoughts are with Ahmed and Geffen, who were both shot that day, and we wish them a speedy recovery. The Talmud says, whoever destroys a single life is considered to have destroyed an entire world, and whoever saves a single life saves an entire world. The heroes of Bondi saved countless lives, and their actions help put back together our broken world and remind us of the enduring power of good over evil. Over the past week, we have seen Australians of all walks of life come together in grief. A once busy beach at Bondi has been stilled and replaced by a sea of floral tributes, a symbol of our collective love for one another, a symbol of solidarity that we have as Australians. And that solidarity with the Jewish community cannot be allowed to ebb in the coming months ahead. We cannot afford to let the torrent of antisemitism and hate that led to the 14th of December continue. I could never have imagined that my very first speech in this chamber as leader of the opposition would be a condolence motion for a terrorist attack in my own community that I would bear witness to. It is unthinkable. On that Sunday, I was about to speak at the Hanukkah event just down the road from Bondi at Dover Heights. And people were dancing in the sun. They were literally throwing their babies in the air. It was such a joyful day. And as I said to friends at that event, what a wonderful way to finish the year after such a shocking start. A previous summer of hate where we'd seen fire bombings become almost a regular occurrence. The ongoing vandalism and anti-Semitic acts that have become so regular it seemed they'd become part of normal life. I was going to talk about the hopes that we had for a brighter future, that perhaps, just perhaps, we could imagine a better tomorrow. But as I stood on stage, the crowd began to disperse. The call came over Rabbi Mendy Litzman's radio that his colleague had been shot, and all the warnings that our Jewish community and the fears had come to realization. Our beautiful Sunday had turned into a bloody Sunday. I ended up in Mendy's Hadsola ambulance, and we sped to the scene, arriving within minutes while there was still live fire, and we parked under that bridge unaware the gunmen were above us. And then we both went to help the victims, scenes that will stay with me forever. Since October 7, evil and hate have been allowed to flourish in this state, to flourish in this country. Appeasement over enforcement has too often been the choices of governments, but also the choices of too many of us. Downplaying the fears of the Jewish community. To anyone who believes that December 14th was unimaginable, it is because we have failed to hear the Jewish community. When Jews were told not to go to the Opera House on October 7th, when thugs were allowed to denigrate the steps of the Opera House and spew their hatred. We should have known then. When students have been subjected to harassment and vile abuse on our university campuses, when Jewish parents have had to tell their children not to wear their Jewish uniforms, we should have known then. When Jews were doxxed and abused online, when people were called to boycott Jewish businesses, when hate preachers in Sydney celebrated the murder of Jews on October 7, we should have known then. When protesters were allowed to descend on our city each week and scream from the river to the sea, globalise the intifada, we should have known then. When cars were firebombed, when neo-Nazis stood outside this parliament with a sign that said abolish the Jewish lobby, we should have known then. When hate becomes normalised in a nation, how can we possibly believe there is any outcome other than what we saw on last Sunday? Since the last fleet, the Jewish community have contributed so much to our country. And can I say, this is your state, this is your home. You should not live in fear. You should not hide your Jewish identity. And yet so many of you feel that you have to. The greatest failure of our country, our national stain, is that we should have any group who feels that they cannot live without fear. How can we say we're a country of the fair go when our Jewish community faces such hate? The task for all of us as Australians is to stand up and say it is all of our jobs to fix this. Because hate and extremism will come for all of us if we don't fix this. On December the 14th, the Jewish community was targeted, but the victims were Jews and non-Jews alike. Our community has wrapped its arms around the Jewish community and itself, and we have seen strangers delivering free food to their neighbours, people rolling up their sleeves to donate blood. We've had an outpouring of floral tributes, local businesses handing out flowers, free coffees. And on Friday, there was a memorial pad out of board riders, swimmers from Salties. And last night, there was a memorial, Hanukkah, the final night of Hanukkah, where the community came together to reclaim the beach, to sing our hearts out in the pouring rain and to honour those who were taken from us. Those 8 candles on the menorah last night reminded us that even the smallest flames can overcome the greatest darkness. Last night, Bondi was a beacon for our nation, shining a light to push back the darkness that always divides us. The days ahead will be hard, but I know the strength of our community, and we will come through this.